Republicans hitting a roadblock on immigration, delaying a vote on a so-called compromise bill until next week after a more conservative measure cannot get off the ground. President Trump blaming Democrats, tweeting this: Republicans should stop wasting their time on immigration until after we elect more senators and congressmen/women in November. Dems are just playing games, have no intention of doing anything to solve this decades-old problem. We can pass great legislation after the red wave, end quote. I referenced the midterms come November. Our guest now supported the conservative bill. Today's headliner, Ohio Republican Jim Jordan, member of the House Freedom Caucus and serves on both the Oversight and Judiciary Committees. Sir, welcome back here.
Good to be with you, Bill.
Nice of you to be our headliner, sir, because we got a lot of stuff to talk about. Vote next week. What can pass, if anything?
Well, right now, nothing can pass, but I will tell you this, 193 votes for the conservative bill. If our leadership had whipped that bill like they've done other pieces of legislation, we're only 19 votes short, Bill. So the real story yesterday was the fact that we were so close with the conservative bill. And frankly, the reason the other bill wasn't being brought up today is because it would get less votes than the conservative bill got yesterday. So the focus should be on that conservative bill. Let's go find those 19 other members who can pass that bill, because after all, that's the one that's consistent with the mandate from the 2016 election, because it does all the good things: border security, build the border security wall, stop visa lottery, stop chain migration, reform our asylum law, all the good things, and it also deals with the DACA population. So let's get refocused on that one, and let's get it passed.
Do you think it was an issue not concentrating on that first bill to begin with, since it did end up being so close? And then what are the issues with the second one that can possibly be resolved over the weekend?
No, you got to. I think that's the wrong premise. Start with the bill that has 193 votes. If there's a few minor things that can be tweaked on that to get us to a majority of the House, then maybe we can look at that. But let's just whip it. Remember, for months we were told by the leadership, oh, that bill only has 150 votes, 160 votes. It can't get close. And yet yesterday, when the vote was called, out there in front of God and everybody, 193 Republicans says this is what's consistent with what we told the American people we were going to do, and they voted for it. So let's focus there. Let's make that the base bill, and let's get that over the finish line. And then the president is right. Chuck Schumer said this earlier in the week. They don't want to do anything, but at least the House should show the American people we are doing what we said.
Well, the president also said today, move on. Go ahead and get more people elected in November and come back to it then.
We may, and Bill, we may have to do that, because Chuck Schumer, as I said, has been very clear. He doesn't want to do anything to fix the problem. He just wants the political issue. But the bill we had yesterday actually would fix the problem. That's the bill that we told the American people we would support. That's what they support. So if we can get anything across the finish line, it should be that. And if it goes to the Senate and they can't get it passed, well, that's just the Senate typically being the Senate, and then we can do what the president said. But let's pass the right thing.
We had the Texas Lieutenant Governor on with us last hour. You know what he said? He said among the 4 states in the Southwest, they apprehend 400,000 people a year. And he said that's just those that we are able to apprehend. He thinks
that's how big this problem is.
He thinks 4 times that many get through. He estimates there's not 11 million illegals in America. He thinks there are 24 million.
All the more reason why we need to do the bill that we passed yesterday.
I get it, but how much has Washington failed those states?
No, we have, right? We had ICE and Customs and Border and Customs in my office last week. They said 2,000 people a week come to the border seeking asylum. That's 100,000 people in a year. They said 80% of those aren't legitimate asylum. They don't qualify. And yet that's what's happening on our border. So we have got to do the right kind of legislation. This is what drives me crazy, more importantly, drives the American people crazy, is that we can't pass the bill that was consistent with what they elected us to do. And that is the Good Lab bill that was on the floor yesterday. But we're so close, so let's get it done.
Well, and then there's just a very short question. Why pass anything if you don't think that it can pass in the Senate?
Well, I mean, we're supposed to do our job. What happens in the Senate, for goodness sake, it's hard to figure out that place. So we should do our job. If the Senate can't do theirs, then let's do what the president said. Let's have an election this fall, and let's have the red wave happen, and let's elect a more conservative senators. I get that, but we should still do our job. That doesn't abdicate. We shouldn't forfeit our ability to do what we're supposed to do.
Well, you still hold the majority, so let's see how it goes now. We'll see whether or not you get it done next week. Now let's talk about documents, compliance, Department of Justice, Peter Strzok, and the whole ball of wax with that. Here is Paul Ryan just yesterday. You know, he's issuing this demand to get the Department of Justice to And if he doesn't get his way, he's threatening a subpoena, et This is what he said about that. Watch.
Last week you met with Rod Rosenstein over this dispute you have over records. Some of your members want to hold him in contempt. One, are you supportive of holding him in contempt?
I am supportive of making sure we get the documents we rightly deserve, that we legitimately requested. We expect compliance. I'm still getting daily reports from our committee chairs about the progress on compliance. I'm going to regroup with them tomorrow. But I expect them to comply with all of our very legitimate document requests, because this is legitimate congressional oversight of the executive branch.
So then what's going to give, sir?
If they don't comply by today, the Speaker's been very clear. He's told me this personally. Our resolution that Mr. Meadows and I and others introduced 2 weeks ago, which says the full House will go on record and tell tell the Department of Justice, if you don't give us what we have within a certain time period, then we will move to the next step. So the resolution comes first. If Rosenstein doesn't comply, then it's contempt, and then we are prepared to file articles of impeachment against Mr. Rosenstein. If he doesn't give the House of Representatives, if he doesn't give the Congress, a separate and equal branch of government, the documents we need to have to get answers for you and the press, and more importantly for the American people. It's that basic, and we're now at the end of the line.
Why do you think they've been so stubborn?
Because it's embarrassing. Why did they, Bill, why did they redact? We've caught them hiding things. Why did they redact the fact that Peter Strzok and one of the FISA court judges, Judge Contreras, were friends? Why did they hide that from us? It's not classified. It's not an ongoing investigation. They just redacted it. We had to go over to DOJ and get the real document, the unredacted document, to find that out. Why did they do that? I mean, this is how bad. I mean, think about this, Bill. Jim Comey's been fired. Andy McCabe, deputy director, fired. Jim Rubicki, chief of staff, has left the FBI. Jim Baker, chief counsel at the FBI, was demoted, then left. Lisa Page, FBI counsel, was demoted, then left. Peter Strzok, deputy head of counterintelligence, was demoted, now has lost his security clearance, was escorted out of the FBI. Those are the 6 key people at the FBI who ran the Clinton investigation, launched the Russian investigation. When have you ever seen an agency where the top 6 people who ran the key investigations have had that happen to them? So there are real problems over there, and Rod Rosenstein had better give us the information we need to do our job, or all 3 of those steps will in fact take place.
You mentioned Peter Strzok. Do you think that you will hear from him, and what do you want to hear from him?
Well, we want to depose him, and it's scheduled to be next week. The Chairman Goodlatte has been clear about this. I talked to him at our hearing with Mr. Horowitz earlier this week. They're going to subpoena him if they have to, but we will get a deposition. More importantly, we need Rod Rosenstein and Christopher Wray in front of the Judiciary Committee in the House to answer our questions as well.
You are also hot on the Department of Justice going after some records of journalists on behalf of the New York Times.
Yes.
What's the rub there?
Well, it's called the First Amendment. It's called freedom of the press. You know, think about it. The federal government went after conservative groups when the IRS targeted them for their political free speech rights. We had what the FBI has done. And now we find out that they went and just grabbed Ali Watkins' emails and records. Are you kidding me? That is never supposed to happen in this country. So this is a law that Mr. Raskin and I, or a bill Mr. Raskin and I have introduced. We hope it passes. We think it will. It passed the House a few years ago when Mike Pence was the sponsor.
Yeah, and I know that I read your article where you were talking about that and you wanted to emphasize it and get it passed. You also related to what is going on right now in terms of the DOJ and not releasing information to you.
Right. This is all about the First Amendment. First Amendment is sacrosanct. Your right to practice your faith the way you want, the right to petition your government, to assemble, your ability to speak in a free fashion and not be harassed by your government, and a right to a free press. So look, go after the leakers. This is this case. Go after the leakers, but do not go grab the material that the reporter has who's giving information to the American people. You cannot do that. That's what our bill says. Let's try to get it passed.
Mark Meadows told us here on Fox yesterday, I think he was on with Neil on Fox Business, that he does not want to be the next Speaker of the House. Do you?
He'd be a good one. Look, I've been very clear. If and when there is a race for Speaker, I plan on being part of that discussion. Right now, I'm focused on doing what we told the American people we were going to do so we can stay in the majority and continue to do what we need to do to make this country great.
I get it. That wasn't necessarily a no, and we've talked about this before. You want to go further?
Bill, I'm focused on doing my job here, representing the people in the 4th District of Ohio. But I appreciate your questions.
You got it. Thank you, sir, for your time. We appreciate that. Jim Jordan there from the Hill.
House Republicans pushing a vote on the compromise immigration bill to next week. This after failing to pass a more conservative version. Despite the setback, though, confidence is still high on Capitol Hill.
We have a wide array of viewpoints, but frankly, everybody wants to solve this problem. And I think that's what's been most encouraging. When you looked at the earlier vote today, you saw a wide range of Republicans voting yes. You didn't see one Democrat voting yes.
So what will it take for the compromise bill to pass? Here to debate it is Republican strategist Jen Kearns and Democratic strategist Antoine Seawright. Thank you both for joining us. We appreciate it.
Good morning.
So let's take a look, first of all, for everyone at home, what is in the failed bill, the Goodlatte bill? No path to citizenship for Dreamers, doesn't allow children to be separated by DHS, and it cuts chain immigration. In the compromise bill, which is still on the table for next week, this bill would offer Dreamers merit-based visas and a path to citizenship. It does not allow children to be separated by the Department of Homeland Security, and it's lenient on chain migration. So, Jen, I will start with you. First of all, why the delay? Will it benefit Republicans at all to push this to next week?
Well, first and foremost, I'm glad to see President Trump acting very swiftly this week to eliminate the separation of families. Boy, it's one of those situations where this president has done nothing but clean up one mess after the other from prior administrations on everything from North Korea to the horrid economy he inherited from Barack Obama and bringing jobs back to America, and the list goes on and on. As far as the bill last night, I was a little surprised that the Goodlatte bill didn't get as many Republican votes as I thought it would. However, I think the bigger story here is the number of Democrats who actually supported it, which, by the way, was zero. I think it speaks volumes about what the far left Democrat Party is all about today, which is obstruction. The fact that not a single Democrat went up on this vote is really surprising.
Right. Let me get Antoine in here. Antoine, answer that. I mean, what are Democrats, what do they want? Will anything be good enough for them prior to the midterm elections?
What Democrats want is what 70% of the American people want, and that's comprehensive immigration reform in a bipartisan way. What Democrats want is what Durbin and Graham tried to do for this president several months ago, was bring a bipartisan bill together that would bring both sides together and essentially attempt to do what the American people want. Look, immigration should not be a partisan issue. Unfortunately, for Donald Trump and the Republican Party, this is a red meat issue. And to my dear friend Jen on the right, who said earlier that Donald Trump acted swiftly, Donald Trump and his administration lied to the American people and tried to make ripping babies away from their families as a red meat issue to motivate the base going into the midterms. And this is why friends will not let friends vote Republican in November. They have been a disaster. The president has not led on the issue of immigration, and the Republican Party has failed the American people.
Can I ask you something as a Democrat? Did you feel the same way when this happened under the Obama administration? Jay Johnson admitted just yesterday that they did expand these, family centers where they had to hold families.
Well, thank God for the fact checkers, because what we know is that under the current administration, and this has been fact checked by PolitiFact, the Washington Post, and a number of the credible outlets, is that the level of families being separated was totally increased under this zero tolerance policy by Donald Trump and his administration versus the Obama administration. But
that's not what I asked you, though. I asked you if you felt the same way, regardless in terms of the numbers, if you felt the same way when this happened during the Obama administration. Why Democrats weren't up in arms about it then, why they weren't saying the same thing that they're saying now, and why, and I'll let you answer that in a minute, Jen, why they, aren't willing to bend at all, it seems.
Well, 90,000 is the figure. 90,000 is the number that President Barack Obama, that is the number of families he separated during his administration. We also know that the Democrats, going back to the Bill Clinton presidency, had the Flores agreement go through the court system. We also know that Barack Obama allowed children to sleep on the floors of cafeterias, the floors of restrooms in these border facilities. and the list goes on and on and on. The people who lied to the American people were the Democrats on January 11th when President Trump had that legendary live bipartisan cabinet meeting. He said, I will sign any bill regarding DACA that comes to my desk. Chuck and Nancy.
He lied to the American people.
Okay, Antoine and Jim, we have to wrap it up. I apologize, we're out of time. But the bottom line is we all agree that something needs to be done, and both sides need to work together to get to that point.
Comprehensive immigration reform.
All right. Thank you for joining us. We appreciate it.